I'm a little confused, and I'm sure you're making like I'm sure you're paying more attention than me because you're like checking out both sides. I kind of like ducked out of the fight of the whole Elon Musk thing and like the craziness that's going on.
Hmm.
But I listened to the Elon Musk on the Joe Rogan on the no Elon Musk on the Joe Rogan podcast, and now I'm even more confused than ever because I'm like, okay, if I just listen to this podcast, are you saying the right things?
Hmm.
You know what I mean? Like he's like, oh, we slashed so much. There's so much inefficiency. Yeah, all those like 135-year-olds are getting paid, and then we're like fixing that. And it's like a giant scam. Like all these all these nonprofits are like making money, and then they're not using the money correctly, which is fair. Like I fully understand that. Like especially like working in the nonprofit world. Like yes, there are some ones that are like, oh, it could be a little weird, but like whatever. But like in terms of the grandioseness that he's saying, I'm like, is that real? Because if it is real, that's crazy, and we should fix that. But if it's not real, it's like this is the craziest psyop. So I'm like, where do we land on this one? Like from what you've looked at,
Well, the thing is, he has to bring the evidence that that's actually happening. He's just saying it, right?
right? But he's
That's the
like, oh, you
problem.
can look on the website. We have all the receipts. I'm like, do you really? Like, I don't know even what that means, bro.
No,
So
no,
like, if you go,
because
okay,
we talked about the whole 135-year-old or something getting paid.
yeah,
That
yeah.
wasn't what's happening.
Right. And Joe Rogan was kind of trying to say that too. He was like,
Right,
is that
right.
really how that works? And then Elon's like, yeah, of course. And you're like, okay,
Well,
you're
this is
saying
the
yes.
this is the controlling of the media. He's not bringing the
That's
evidence that's true, right?
yes. No, but
Even
that freaks me out.
yeah, even Trump,
Yeah.
like the whole along with that thing was like, oh, transgender were mice. I don't know if you had seen any of that clip.
No, something about like testing, something about animal mutilation or something like that. I was like, what are you
Yeah,
guys saying right
and then
now?
he said like they were putting money in. That's what Trump said in his like that not inauguration. What do you call that? The State of the Union address.
Oh,
That happened earlier this week. That was like the transgender mice, but that's not the truth though. It's called it.
okay.
It's like a science experiment or whatever. It's like transgenic mice, which is just trying to add human DNA to get better results in drug trials. It's not
Okay.
transgender
So
mice.
right. So now I'm like, either either there's so much corruption going on and it's crazy, or the wolves are in the hen house and we're just like, what are we talking about right now, guys?
Hmm.
And we need to fix the situation. Like it must feel like I've never lived in like those, fascist country type things like China and Russia. Allegedly, like that's what they're saying, like that's how they operate. But like if you're seeing something that's blatantly untrue in the media and nobody's gonna look at it, you're like, okay, like I'm not even looking at it. I'm like, this is just too out of the realm of my like I'll just stick to UFOs because you guys are tripping out over this like these bills that are being like canceled, but then you're like but we're reversing the ones. He's like, oh, we're canceling a lot of things, but then we're reversing them quickly if they're wrong. I'm like, does that just mean you move too quickly then? Like,
Yeah,
you,
that means you're not actually taking a scalpel. You're just
yes, you're chainsawing. Yeah, when he's like, oh, we're the chainsaw of truth, it's like, yeah, you're literally just hacking it off. You're not like, he's like, we're really like looking at the things. It's like, not really. You're kind of just like saying no. And then if they come back with a good answer, you're like, okay, we'll put it back on. And you're
mhm.
like, that's wasted inefficiency. Like, people are just like, like imagine if you're like
Well, yeah. I mean, if
trying
you do
to
that kind of
coach,
thing,
yeah.
this is where people, especially with what they're dealing with. It's not like I understand if it's a new company you're running it. Like, yeah,
Mm,
you're starting it from the ground up, fixing those issues. But when you have like it's government stuff that are this actually affects people's lives, right? That
yeah.
so where the money is going and stuff.
Mm.
So and nothing is like again, this is all stuff that's gone through Congress. It's not like it was hidden as to where the money was going, right?
Right.
And again, to
Right.
prove that it was inefficient was to show that there's audits or all these sort of things is the way to do it, right? That's not really what's happening. So if
Right.
he's
And what
just yeah, as you said, like if he's just chainsawing it and then oh we made a mistake here, let's bring that back. So
so you're like, dog, what? That seems really,
mhm,
quick.
right.
And I think that maybe it worked for those because you're like talking about like a new company and it's like it worked for X and it worked for like Tesla and it worked for all these other companies because it's like you can be crazy like that,
Hmm.
you know? If this company fails, this company fails.
Yeah.
You know, he's made so many risky moves in the past where I was listening to this podcast like before even this all happened, they were just talking about like Elon Musk and his ability to like take risk.
Hmm.
They were saying that on the podcast because like he had the choice between Tesla and SpaceX. You have to let one survive or let them both fail. And he's like, well, I guess what they're both going to fail. And then it didn't
Hmm.
fail. So it's like, I understand that mentality. I understand that you're doing this from a business perspective, but as a country, I don't even know if you can do it like that. Like you're treating it the same. You're like, okay, I'll
Yeah,
just
yeah.
hack this part out. You know what I mean? And it's like,
But a lot of
right,
these things
but
are
it,
critical things. It's like
yeah,
air traffic. We need air traffic controls. You just fired all of them. Oh shoot.
right. But if it's like X or something, or if it's like Tesla, you're like, oh, it's fine, just rehire them back on.
Right.
But
I
it's
mean,
like, no,
like,
no, that's like a lot of people, dog. You
like you
know?
can, yeah, like you can say with the air traffic control thing was, well, why were their planes having a lot of issues? Like all those
Right.
accidents. It seems. I mean, it happened around the same time, right? I don't know if it's connected.
Yeah, totally, totally, totally. He said this one thing where I was like, that seems a little like it seems not like from a basis. He was trying to blame that on DEI. He's like a lot of like
But that
admittedly
doesn't.
old white people who are very skilled at their job, they got kicked out because of DEI reasons. And I was like, how do you know they were skilled though? Like, you know what I mean?
No,
Like their
yeah, there
jobs.
was some lines in there that was like a little iffy, especially saying that. Yeah, he's saying white people. It's
He
like
literally said old
he
white.
said white
He's like,
people.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah. That
yeah,
that
old white men. He's
sounds
like a lot of old white men who were very skilled at their job lost it to DEI, and I was like, it's kind of weird. Kind of weird you said it like that. You
right.
know?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
He's like, the truth is they had a lot of experience. I'm like, hmm, okay,
And
like,
DEI doesn't mean I don't like. It's not like they lower the standards.
mm-mm. Yeah, no, they didn't. They just like they allowed more. They opened up the funnel more.
Yeah.
So like if it's like a funnel to like narrow people down, they've just opened it. They made practices to make sure that you open the funnel.
Hmm.
It's not like yeah, they'll get it. I mean, some cases I'm sure like they'll get it over this person simply because of their skin color. Makes sense.
But they
But
still
like
have to have the at least. I mean,
qualifications,
especially
yeah.
yeah, the qualifications. You still have to pass those tests, right? It's not
Yeah.
like
Yeah, yeah, exactly, exactly. It's like I mean, to be fair, you can like there are like doctors who just made it by, you know, and then you're like, oh,
sure.
like I'm a weird doctor, you know? Um, yeah, it's
But that
just
can
like
happen to white
yeah,
people too. It's nothing to do with DI.
that's what I mean. That's what I mean. Yeah, that's what I mean. And it's like,
Then you're just
yeah,
saying
you
that
will
white
get
supremacy. That sounds white supremacy.
it
If you're
does, bro. And it's funny because like Joe Rogan asked him. So the reason why I listened to it is I saw this dude react to the podcast and it was titled like Elon Musk has a breakdown on Joe Rogan's podcast. I'm like, oh, that's interesting. So I watched like the dude's like the segment of it, but he kept putting his narrative over top. So I'm like, okay, let me just watch the podcast and see if he
hmm
actually does a
hmm
mental breakdown. He didn't have a mental breakdown. So like it was kind of weird the like the clickbaity title that the thing that I saw, but it forced me to watch the podcast.
hmm
But like he seems fully sane. And one thing that they asked about, like Joe Rogan brought up, was like, how do you feel being called a Nazi in front of like the whole world for X and you just bought X, you know? And then Elon's like, yeah, I didn't expect that to come. And then they're like, yeah, but obviously you're not a Nazi, not a Nazi. And it's like, right. But if it walks like a duck, quacks like a duck, you don't have to call it something else. It's just kind of like it's kind of weird, you know,
hmm
being like a lot of old white people lost their jobs. I'm like, that's interesting.
Yeah,
The
yeah.
Nazi, the
These are
Nazi
weird.
symbol salute. You're like, that's kind of weird too.
Right, right.
You know, it's like you don't. Yeah, he's like, we don't call ourselves Nazis anymore. I'm not a Nazi. I'm a freaking woke man. You know, like you change it, but it's
Yeah,
like, yeah,
yeah,
but
yeah.
still the tropes are the same, bro. You know what I
Hmm
mean?
hmm
And maybe that's how he's rationalizing it in his head. You know, like Joe Rogan's like, "How you're not obviously a Nazi?" He's like, "Yeah, I'm not a Nazi." He's like, "Yeah, you're right. You're not a Nazi. You're something else,
hmm
but exhibiting behaviors that are very Nazi-like." You
Right.
know.
Sure. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
However, I mean, like maybe there was like some weird breaking point, but it's almost like he was always there the whole time. because I have been listening like through the UFO podcast. They've been talking about like first principles a lot, and I'm like, oh, first principle thinking, first principle, and you're like, it's this like slogan that keeps getting pushed around in like intelligent circles. Like we need to take a first principles approach, right? So I
Mm-hmm.
was like, okay, well, what does this mean? So I just Googled like what does first principles mean, and it gave you like this really convoluted answer. So I was like, okay, let me just YouTube because I'm sure somebody's gonna create a YouTube video, and everyone associated first principles thinking to Elon Musk. So I was like, okay, let me watch it, and it's where he basically the concept is this: there's two ways to think in life, either through analogy, which is like or as. It's an analogy. So like, oh, it's done like this in the past. It's done like that over there, right? But
Sure.
first principles is like you only look at what's real, like what you know for sure, and then build from there.
Mm-hmm.
And that's Elon Musk's process for like SpaceX, Tesla, right? He like openly said that in an interview. So I'm like, you're intelligent. You're not dumb.
Yeah, yeah, of course
So we can't
not.
throw the baby out with the bathwater. But it's like it's a little creepy. I don't know how else to say it. It's just like, you know what I mean? It's like,
Sure.
yes, like you're intelligent. I read your book. You know, I really like your perspective on life and like your thought process for problem solving. But these things right now are kind of odd. You know what
Right.
I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, I wonder if it was like that for Hitler too. You know what I mean? Maybe people are like, oh, he's a brilliant strategist. Oh, like everybody talks about Mein Kampf or something, like that book that he wrote while in prison,
Mm-hmm.
right? And like, oh, he's so brilliant, but he's a Nazi, you know?
Right. Yeah, yeah,
And then,
yeah.
and even like, I was listening to that Al Qaeda podcast, like, Sean Ryan, and the one person, she's like, embedded with Al Qaeda, and she was saying that the leader right now is so intelligent. He put out a book, and she's like, everyone needs to read this book because it's perfect strategic warfare. He's the most brilliant strategic warfare person I've ever like read, right? But he's also in Al Qaeda, so it's like, you know, these intelligent people really just take it the wrong way, or like they're
Yeah, I
backed by I don't
mean,
know, you know what I mean?
yeah, it doesn't mean like intelligent people means a good person. That doesn't mean that.
Yes, yeah, exactly, exactly. And it's like, what does that, what defines that? It's almost like the problem we're gonna face with AI in the future. You know,
Mm-hmm.
like Elon Musk's fear is like, okay, you're just going to say something, and then AI is just going to come up with his own interpretation. It's like, oh, we need world peace on Earth. AI is like, okay, cool. So we need people to stop fighting. We're going to do a hive mind. We're going to kill everyone. You know, or like, or we're just going to put
Mm-hmm.
everyone in like a chemical soup. You know, and it's like, right, that was the plan, but it seems like you're evil because of the way you're going about it. So it's like maybe
Mm-hmm.
all these people are like just trying to solve the problem, and like they're just being tagged as evil, just like we would have for like AI,
Right. Yeah.
you know? Because they're
Yeah,
like
yeah, yeah.
they're all intelligent. It's like, okay, they're all intelligent, but how are we going about this,
Yeah,
guys?
you can have an
You
evil
know?
genius. Those exist.
Right? Exactly, exactly. It's just like AI. It's like that'll just be an evil genius, you know, or just
Mm-hmm.
took it the wrong way.
Yeah.